if you let every, you would never hold a meeting. So, Beth, do you want to go ahead and start and just share, some important details that maybe will help everybody have a really clear understanding of why this lawsuit is so important?
Sure. And Jerry, please chime in, obviously.
You're the star.
I don't know about that. Um, so we were approached by LWVUS after the word came down that we were no longer allowed to provide voter registration services at naturalization ceremonies. That the national office was partnering with Campaign Legal Center to sue. And we have 6 Colorado local leagues that have signed on. Colorado was noted for its enthusiasm in this lawsuit. And yeah, I mean, Arapahoe Douglas, of course, is our biggest local league to do the naturalization voter registration. But plenty of other chapters provide voter registration services at special ceremonies. So I actually just got off the phone with a reporter from Politico about it. So,
Beth, let me ask you a quick question. So, are the 6 local leagues that have signed on, are they local leagues where naturalization ceremonies occur?
yes.
Okay. Can you hit, besides Arapahoe Douglas, who else?
Denver, Estes Park, Larimer, Boulder. I knew you were going to ask me this, Karen. I should have had it up.
Paso and Adams have done some, but they aren't part of the group at the moment.
Is it Weld? Did you add
It's
Weld?
Weld. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Arapahoe Douglas, Denver, Larimer, Estes Park, Boulder, and Weld. Good.
They're listed in the lawsuit in the draft that she sent out in, I think it's paragraph 15 or page 15 or 16. They list them all.
Estes Park isn't a county. They're in
Nope.
Larimer.
No, years ago, Estes Park formed their own league just because of the geographical complexities of having meetings with the
okay.
on the plains and versus the mountains. So they established
It's our only municipal league.
No, Denver's a municipal and a county. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If I could jump in for just a second, Arapahoe Douglas, and we've got the bulk of the ceremonies and the voters who have been registered, simply because USCIS headquarters or their field office for the state is based in Centennial, which is in Arapahoe County. And to date, I finally found to write these things on the back of scraps of paper. 41 ceremonies between January and the end of August.
Can you send me this info, Jerry?
Oh, I think, okay. Well, it was probably in the stuff from Marge Dalton, but I'll send it again. You want just the statistics or? I will send it again, whatever.
Thanks. Thanks.
41
Appreciate
ceremonies and had registered 789 new citizens. So they all should have gotten a ballot this fall. Yay.
And I bet you they voted.
I bet they did too.
And I think Lisa Haddock sent you our information. Is that correct, Beth? From Denver? I don't have it available, but because Lisa keeps that data.
Yes, I did get that. Thank you.
So what did the Politico reporter want to know? What did you tell him?
Oh, she was trying to get me to bash Trump.
Oh.
just said it's the most natural thing that people should be registered directly after their naturalization ceremony. And the league has been proud to do that and to connect with our newest citizens. And well, why do you think the current administration has taken this step?
Did you say beats me? Why does he do
Because
it?
they clearly don't want people to vote. There's a lot of fear and political division out there right now.
Yeah.
Tactful.
And but said, democracy is healthiest when everybody votes and everybody participates. And that's what we're trying to do.
She does realize the league is nonpartisan.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you'll just have to say, well, I'm sure they would have a response, so go check with them.
Did they get any information? Because I think the lawsuit says that it ought to be local, state, and local officials who register these people to vote. And one of the arguments is they don't have the time or manpower to do that. Did they get testimony from like our county clerks or our Secretary of State about that?
I don't know. And when you say they, do you mean the lawyers or Politico? But I don't know.
People filing the lawsuit, the people filing the lawsuit, to be able to.
I would assume so, but I am not sure.
Okay.
We were very clear and transparent with the lawyers that, we have talked to county and local officials, well, county and state officials trying to develop a workaround. And, Politico brought that up and said, are you still working on that? And I'm like, we're hoping this lawsuit will do the job. So we won't have to.
Yeah.
Well, and at least on our end at the local level, the county clerk indicated that they wouldn't have time to really explore a potential avenue until after they got the election taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. So I'm not expecting anything from the local county clerk until like January, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the executive order stated that the burden on USCIS to ensure that we and other groups were acting in a nonpartisan manner was just too great. And that's why we shouldn't be allowed. And I said to the reporter, well, it seems to me that the burden on state and local officials to provide voter registration services now at these naturalization ceremonies is a hell of a lot bigger than it is to confirm that the league is acting in a nonpartisan manner. We have never received a complaint. We have an excellent partnership with USCIS.
How do they think that we would be influential? I mean, all we're doing is registering people. We're not campaigning for a candidate. We're not providing them with ballot measures information. I mean, I'm assuming we're not. So
no, we're whispering. Check
Vote.
the D box.
Yeah, well, but that doesn't mean that that's how they'll vote it once they get to the polls.
Well, and the other thing is we register everyone.
Yeah.
We don't pick and choose who to register. We register anybody that wants to register to vote.
Yes, but what the administration is clearly implying is that we are whispering to these new citizens that they should check the Democrat box, not the Republican box.
Jerry,
isn't that what we all think?
Yeah.
I would put it more bluntly that we think that on their own, based on current politics, they are unlikely to be the ones that are going to be big fans of Trump with all the difficulties that they know that people who are trying to immigrate are experiencing. So, I mean,
But
that's
there
sort of
is
behind. That's not what you're going to tell political.
no, of course not. But what's crazy, well, there are a fair number of naturalized immigrants who are very angry at undocumented folks
Mhm.
because they did it the right way and the undocumented folks did it the illegal way and they should be deported. So there's even a split amongst that community, is my understanding. Not that it's one community,
Right.
but
So how do you want us, or are you going to put out some guidelines for us if we receive calls at our local league offices or if our local newspapers come to us? Are you going to send out guidelines on how you would like us to respond and what
I
you would
already
like
did.
us to say? You did.
Yes.
Too.
You should have gotten that, Sue.
Okay.
Yeah.
I-
It's a sublink in one of the early
Because
documents. that were
I
sent.
sent a follow-up to everyone who attended the meeting, and if the president wasn't the attendee, I added on the presidents. So I added you, Jeanette, and Pearl Ann,
Okay.
as well as Lisa. If I'm wrong, I truly apologize. I
I'll
could swear
check
I
it.
did that, Sue.
You probably did.
Okay.
Are there any, are you worried about any things that could get out in the public or people misconstruing anything? Is there anything you would like us to be cautious about, or
Not
on the
really.
other hand, would you like us to toot our horns more?
I think we should definitely toot horns. This is a big deal. However, because we're suing USCIS instead of the Trump administration, I mean, it's because of the Trump administration, but I'm not as worried because there's a lot of people who don't know what USCIS is. And
They'll probably
I don't know. I
confuse
feel like this lawsuit is actually pretty like we're suing for a reason that is really understandable and clear and nonpartisan.
It's not, yeah, it's not.
So I don't see this as a super controversial lawsuit myself. Now, that doesn't mean that some extremist is going to disagree with me.
Mhm.
And I did say in the email that if anybody gets any kind of concerning communication, to please let me know immediately. LWVCO, here's Neil. It, has had a safety plan in place for several years now since we filed the lawsuit against USEIP. And, in the board's mind, that covers local leagues and members as well. So if somebody gets a concerning communication, let me know immediately and we will take steps to help you to feel safe, whether that's removing you to a different location, providing guards, whatever. So I don't, again, I'm not particularly worried about that with this particular suit. I'm a lot more worried about it with the USEIP suit, frankly. Jerry?
This is an anecdotal observation, but if you should get approached by what parties register the most when we're on duty, most of them are unaffiliated. The majority of them are unaffiliated, I would say. If they
But do we even track that?
No, it's just
Yeah.
after we're done, we have like a 3-step review process. So I check the ones that I bring home, and the ones from Denver and Boulder register D or unaffiliated. The one from Douglas County and El Paso register as an R. So that fits the demographics of their residents.
Mhm.
But, 90% are unaffiliated, I would guess.
I was going to say the same thing, and that's an observation. So
Yeah,
I think you can
I
absolutely
haven't
say
counted,
that.
so take it for what that is. That's my observation.
Yes.
However, if a reporter asks, I suggest you say, we don't track that.
Yeah.
We do not formally track.
And all registrations are sent to the county clerk of residence.
Absolutely.
Does every person that I'm sorry, I've been trying to get the Department of Revenue to call me back and they just did. So I kind of really have to take this call, but in between time, I'm waiting. Jerry, and maybe you know this too, Susan, does everybody at these naturalization ceremonies, does everybody register?
No,
No.
Okay, so
it ranges from 20% to 80%.
okay. Well, that in and of itself is interesting, I think.
And it kind of depends, interest in elections last summer were pretty low. Picked up a bit in the fall, kind of like the rest of the public. The numbers increase.
I've always sort of felt like it kind of depends on, like there's a big group dynamic, even though these people being naturalized together don't have any ties that bind that we know. They don't know each other.
No.
If
And I
it
think
seems like if a bunch of them are registering, more people register, but if a bunch of them head straight to the elevator, more people do that.
And I think part of their probation period before they get their naturalization, they are not, one of the criteria is they are not allowed to participate in public or political activities. I mean, they can certainly read the news, they can form opinions, and that's theirs, but they can't go work on a campaign or stuff like that. I think, it's just kind of hearsay that I'm piecing all these little pieces of information together. Because they say,
Well,
now I can say something. Okay, things like that.
I was just talking to a board member about the fact that USCIS is, making the citizenship test harder. Today's the last day for public comment, folks. But she was suggesting we start a campaign to get every Colorado legislator to take and pass the citizenship test with 100% accuracy before the new session starts.
Oh, I've thought of using it on league members.
Yeah, but
it's online.
Yep.
I keep flunking the part about Benjamin Franklin. So
what was that?
I kept flunking the part about Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, have you been watching Ken Burns' American Revolution?
Yes. This is like
Probably
before
wouldn't
COVID. I would take the test and I'd go, oh, I missed Ben Franklin's questions again.
Any other questions about the USCIS lawsuit? Any other questions I could answer?
Wish us well.
I do.
Yeah.
And there'll probably be amicus briefs provided by other organizations too, I would imagine.
I would sure think so. And I bet other leagues will sign on too.
A question. Could you send us the link or do you have the link on where to make the public comment? Or how do I could just Google it probably.
I'll look for that and try to put it in the chat, Fair.
Okay, thanks.
Are we reaching out to the Colorado Sun to, for example, to say to them, are you interested in an article about this? Or the Denver
We sent out a
Post?
press
Or...
release to
Oh,
all
okay.
of our media contacts, and
Thanks.
we leave it up to them.
Okay.
Okay, poor Karen's on the phone with the tax people.
Oh, she has, we'll never see her again.
Yeah, she may be on until midnight. I don't feel prepared to run this meeting. Neil, I understand you're supposed to speak.
Super. I didn't know Karen wasn't available at the moment. So I'm very sorry, Beth, to miss your update. It sounds great. I was excited to see it, but I was on a call coincidentally with the Dominion CEO Scott Leindecker, who was talking with a bunch
Liberty
of
votes.
security experts and other people.
Good.
So I was waiting in line to ask my question, and I figured I would just hang on and wait in line instead of joining with you all because I wanted to be both places. Anyway,
Cool.
that was a generally positive and constructive call, and he seems to have a good attitude. And I've heard that from Amber McReynolds and from Molly Fitzpatrick and other Colorado clerk experts and stuff. So crossing our fingers that will help them get more secure and less controversial and more focused on elections, but it's going to take a lot of work. So anyway, I'd be happy to talk about RLA updates, or I don't know if anybody knows anything else about agenda changes or ideas. What's up?
I think you're up, Neil.
Yeah.
No one else jumping forward. So I can report I just heard this minutes ago and checked my email, and sure enough, there's an email from the Secretary of State's office saying that the risk limiting audit of the 2025 general election that we just had has just wrapped up. I'm pretty sure that means that there was only a single round. I think that might be the first time that none of the counties had to go to a second round. I'm not positive of that, but this is quick and early and impressive, probably. So I just wanted to give some details. There's some really notable things about this particular risk limiting audit. And please interrupt with questions anytime. I see Karen. Do you want to take back over, Karen? We can't hear you, Karen, because you're muted, but you're telling us to continue.
I am. Thank you for excusing me for a few minutes. Take it away, Neil.
Absolutely. No, thank you. So one of the things we've been waiting for several years is the ability to use the standard Colorado auditing software to audit instant runoff elections. So the single winner ranked voting method that has been used in Boulder and was used in Fort Collins for the first time this year in Fort Collins. And while Boulder had to roll their own audit, my colleague Vanessa Teague and Michelle Blum have been working for years on updating the Colorado software to seamlessly make that auditable in Colorado. And they just did that. And Vanessa was actually in town and had lunch with a couple of us just a few days ago. And it was she lives in Australia, so it's a big deal for her to be in town. And I haven't heard directly from her, but the fact that the audit is over tells me that they probably had a good time there. So I don't have detailed updates on how that went, but I know that that's a big deal and making it easier for other counties to use new voting methods. Any questions on that one? Anybody know any more about that one? That's exciting to me, and it's enormously complicated. And actually, to understand how complicated it is, for example, if I just recently kind of was confirmed and realized that if there were all kinds of candidates, and they were really close. I mean, if we're talking dozens or hundreds of candidates, mathematically, you might just not be able to figure out what the margin of victory is, even in a single winner ranked IRV election, just because the number of possible sequences of elimination increases with the factorial of the number of candidates. So, 100 factorial or even 50 or 20 factorial is an enormous number of different ways the elimination might have happened, which is, of course, what you're trying to check in an audit. You can usually limit that a lot, but there are times that even our software, with all the new changes, might say, I just can't tell you what the margin was. So move along or give me more time or something like that. Mathematically, it's an intensely difficult problem with ranking methods. But usually it's very quick when there's only a couple candidates.
Let me ask you this really quickly. Even if they can't give you what the margin is, do you feel confident that they can accurately say that, yes, this is the person who wins and should take office?
No.
Oh. Well, maybe
and that's true for the way that a risk limiting audit works, first of all, we need to remember and keep reminding election officials, unfortunately, that we do a risk limiting audit in Colorado during every election, but we only audit a couple of contests. I mean, we audit one contest for each county and one or more statewide, but we only do a small number of contests for which we guarantee all the math and all the statistics, and we choose a risk limit. The wonderful thing about Colorado is that, unlike any other state nearly, we also look at and have great data on all the contests. So there are hundreds of contests in every Colorado election, and we get people looking at the paper ballot and interpreting, humans looking at an audited ballot, a ballot selected for the audit for all the contests. And we gather that information, but we don't really look at discrepancies in any methodical way, as far as I know, for anything except the ones that drive the audit, for the ones that we guarantee the risk limit for. And what that means is that even even if Fort Collins had not done an RLA of their mayor contest, we would have looked at a bunch of the ballots that had the mayor contest on it, and we would have looked for discrepancies, and we would have been able to, with extra assessment, figure out what was going on. Now, if it was one of these that I just mentioned, where there's hundreds of, 100 candidates, and they all had, a measurable number of votes, and it was kind of unclear how the elimination was expected to have gone, and you couldn't figure out the margin. That is still possible in Colorado. If you don't know what the margin is, the margin might be 1, or it might even have depended on a tie at some point along the way. And it's going to take a full hand count to really assess what who the winner was with the kind of confidence that a risk limiting audit requires. And a full hand count is something that they're just terrified of at the Secretary of State's office if they were to ever audit something with that close a margin. If you don't even know what the margin is, you might be faced with a situation where it might have been eliminated in this order, and then we might have a different winner, and the votes would have transferred differently, and so we don't know. So we are in that situation, not just with those, but with hundreds, honestly, of other contests in Colorado where we get some evidence about the outcome. We know what the margin is, but we didn't really get enough to say, to reduce the risk very much. Is that making sense?
So this is with ranked choice voting that we're talking about.
So I've also been writing software to analyze the audit center, which nobody has really looked at in the detail that we should. and figure out like we have a risk limit, which is what you guarantee for a contest that you audit. We can also calculate a risk level and say, well, how many ballots did we look at, and what was the margin, and how much, how much confidence, or how much did we limit the risk? And for some contests, it's enormous. But for other contests, it's, you might still have 80, 90, 95% risk because we didn't look at very many ballots and it was a tight margin and we just don't know. So while election officials will often say, we did a risk limiting audit of the election, it's really only true that we did an audit of certain contests. And if somebody were to hack some other contest, most people, if they're going to hack something maliciously, they're only going to hack one contest. It's going to be one that they have a big financial interest in. And they could get away with that in anywhere in the world, as far as I know. We have more evidence in Colorado that they didn't than most places. But for a tight election, it's absolutely still something that we should improve our auditing methods to try to deal with.
Is there, in order to choose, what's the protocol for choosing which particular race is going to be audited? Is there something built in so that those races where those races where somebody trying to get in and fool with the vote is more likely than others? In other words, is there kind of a rank that, I would assume maybe a governor race would be more important than something further down the chain? I don't know.
Well, first of all, the reality is that any statewide contest is going to have so many ballots audited, looked at, just because every county has a sizable number of ballots that they look at. Every statewide contest, even a very close one, is going to have a lot of evidence. So I wouldn't ever really worry about state level contests, and probably true for representative contests if you look at them. If they're big elections, given the number of ballots we look at, we're going to get pretty good evidence. Though we need to look at it, and I don't think we're doing a good job of looking at it, and that's why I'm trying to fix this. But on the other hand, if you've got, a county with, or a city, especially a city with a ballot issue that is, for some big commercial contract, the number of ballots that will pop up in the audit for that might be very small, assuming that it's not one of the ones that was targeted for audit. So how do they target them for audit? Well, that's a choice that is left to the Secretary of State according to the rules. And there are a lot of people who are frustrated that our Secretary of State is a pretty partisan person and don't trust her. And, that's the reality of politics. There's lots of people that lots of people don't trust. And we are trying to come up with ways to take that out of a partisan office hands and put it in a more regular thing. But the problem is that if you want to audit, even the Aurora mayor last time, or the Arvada mayor, I think, a couple of years ago, it would take a whole lot of auditing that the counties are reluctant to do. So it's but there are. So here's the good thing. There are new auditing techniques that would allow that to be much more efficient, but we haven't had any interest at the Secretary of State's office to incorporate those new auditing methods into our software.
Is that because it's expensive to do that?
Well, actually, there's a product that's open source that would allow us to do it for free. So a county, this is something there's so many ideas that I have, and I think this is one that has fallen off the list. A county could say, gosh, people here really want us to audit that contest. Our current software won't do it, but we could use this free open source software to do it. and it would be much more efficient. And wouldn't that be a good thing? So I'm going to write that down just because it's really something that there are some very cooperative clerks that might be willing to do. So I just wrote that down to myself. So anyway, there's a bunch of things I wanted to chat about. Those are excellent questions, and they're always front of mind for me and many people. And I'm not trying to paint Colorado in a bad light. I'm trying to say that nationwide, we really are not dealing with this particular aspect of the problem, a small municipal bond issue that might be very valuable to someone, and there might be a lot of arm twisting risk that we don't get a lot of evidence for. So we should do a better job of that, and we're working on it. What I do want to say is another aspect that has a lot of people frustrated is that, that has skeptics frustrated. Most of us are, remain very happy with the evidence we get in Colorado, but we have to admit that we're auditing computers, that is the voting systems and the people that use computers to adjudicate ballots and so on. We're auditing those computers using another computer. When you actually go to a risk limiting audit in Colorado, you have people entering data into a computer saying this human looked at this ballot and they saw these votes, and I'm going to enter that into a computer, and only the computer will do a comparison of what the audit board entered versus what the voting system originally looked at. And if you don't trust computers, why are you trusting computers to audit computers? So we had a breakthrough finally after pushing on this issue for several years in La Plata County. So Tiffany Lee is the clerk in La Plata County, as you know, Karen. And she was willing to, for the first time, release to the public a redacted version of their cast vote record so that a member of the public could sit behind an audit board and listen and watch what they're doing and say, and be armed with exactly the information about what they should be expecting. And I'm going to back up, and I'm going to first of all say the audit board does not look at the cast vote record. The audit board looks at paper, and they enter paper interpretations into the computer. So they don't know while they're entering that, does what they're entering agree with what the original system interpretation was? And that's a good thing. We call that a blind audit. We don't want them to be in a position of even being able to say, oh, it said it was a vote for Washington, but I really want it to be a vote for Benedict Arnold. And that's what, the record, that we hacked the record and we want to cover that up. So we're going to cover that up. We don't want them to know things like that. So we do the audit blind, but I would like a member of the public to have that cast vote record, to sit behind the team, to not be allowed to say anything to the team, but be allowed to listen and be armed with information about exactly what they'd be saying, because we know what's going to happen in the audit. And I wrote software this year that takes that cast vote record that we got from La Plata County, that takes the sample that was chosen by the roll of the dice, that reproduces all the calculations on how to do the sample, and that literally gave us a script that said, audit board number 1 is going to start off and they're going to see ballot number 102-39-42. And the first contest on that ballot is going to be the La Plata County Commissioners. And the vote on that ballot is going to be for John Smith. And I expect them to read that out exactly like that, in that order. And all I have to do is say, wow, yeah, that was the right ballot. Yep, that's the contest that came first. Yep, that's who my record, the cast vote record, says the vote was for. Check it off and just go through, listen to them, go through the whole audit, check them all off. If there's a discrepancy, you'll hear it read, then you'll hear it repeated, because there's always an entry and then a checking of the entry. You'd be able to hear it and confirm it. You'd be quiet because you're not allowed to interfere with the blind audit, but you would expect them to note a discrepancy and to be able to confirm that. So we're trying to allow human observers, to observe the audit and be able to confirm that the computer was right. And we tried to do a little bit of that in Broomfield and in Boulder. We didn't get cooperation. We came up with all this this proposal too late for them to agree to let us do it in those counties. But in La Plata, they were happy to help that. But unfortunately, we didn't have somebody on the ground with short notice to actually do the listening. I'm hoping that the county clerk did a little bit of that, or that somebody did. We gave them the information. But that's the next wave of being able to ground the audit in human observation and checking. Does that make sense? I never know if I understand this too well, and a lot of it can be confusing. Does that make any sense?
Let me ask you, because see if I'm understanding this accurately. So they take the cast vote records, they pull out the samples that have been determined should be samples based on the roll of the dice. The audit board, those are people that are participating in the risk limiting audit, then they pull that ballot, whatever it happens to be, and it's just that they just look at the vote cast for a single race, like you said, the mayor or the county commissioner or whatever. But or do they look at the votes for everything on that ballot? Okay.
So what we do in Colorado is we do the risk limiting audit of a specific set of contests, usually one per county and one or two at the state level. Those are what we call targeted contests. And every time anybody enters, looks at any ballot sheet, they're asked for and enter the marks for every contest. So we get data
For everything.
based on every selected, a lot of the work is just finding that piece of paper. As long as we went to all the work of finding the right piece of paper, we go ahead and we enter the data for all of them. We call those opportunistic audits. So hundreds of contests are audited in an opportunistic way. It's not a risk limiting way, but it is, like we had the opportunity to look at those votes on those pieces of paper, and we're just going to tell you what we saw. We're not going to do the calculations at the state level to say what we think of that, but we are going to share the data so you can do the calculations if you want. And that's what I'm starting to do more.
So let me backtrack then. So what you're telling me is they record all that information for every single race or ballot measure, I'm assuming, on that particular ballot. But the only one that they actually do the calculations on is whatever I'm assuming the Secretary of State decides should be done, or
That's correct.
Or is there any and so is that just for statewide issues? Or if we have a county commissioner race, and our county doesn't matter because they're just Republicans, but if there was something more local.
So every county, there is an audit, a contest selected for audit in each county.
Okay,
so there was one in La Plata County that was selected for audit. I don't know offhand what it was, but you can look it up on the Audit Center on the Secretary of State's website. And they would have looked at the margin for that contest in La Plata, and they would have looked at how many ballots there were in La Plata, and they would have picked a sample size, and they would have had, most of the auditing is done for those local contests. Okay. Because the amount of auditing you need to do really only depends on the margin of victory. It doesn't even really depend on how many ballots there are. So you can audit a statewide contest that has 3 million ballots, but you can audit it if it's a wide margin of victory. You can audit it with 30 or 40 individual comparisons, each of which matches. Mm-hmm. But you might also need 30 or 40 for a local contest with a pretty wide margin. Or if it's a tight margin, you might need hundreds of ballots. And I think Broomfield did 170 ballots because they had a tighter margin. And if it's a tighter margin, then you need to look at more ballots to make sure that there wasn't a small error that caused a problem. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So anyway, we had this great opportunity thanks to Tiffany Lee in La Plata County, and we're going to be talking more about her and with her. We also now have software to help, if they want it, if we can convince them to take it, to help the counties much more quickly anonymize their cast vote record. They haven't been releasing the cast vote records because there might be a rare style. There might be only a handful of people or even a single person who voted on a particular combination of contests. If one district overlaps with another district and with a third district, there might only be one person that voted in all three of those contests. So they have to do some work to make sure that they don't essentially release that person's vote because we know who voted in the election and we know what they were eligible to vote on. So I've written some software to try to do a better job actually than the law requires on that. And I'm just beginning to work with clerks on how to do that. And that might help us get closer to all the counties letting us do what they did in La Plata. So anyway, I was in both Broomfield and Boulder to watch their audits. Broomfield was very welcoming and let me take pictures and see what was going on. Boulder was a little more stodgy, as they often are, and made it hard to carefully observe. But they're also willing to talk to us if we come to them early enough to put a good plan together. So I think we're going to get some progress there too. And there's one other thing I want to touch on, which is that the league is pushing in the voting methods team for auditing, for having contests that use proportional representation. We want county council members, and we want the legislature even to have multiple winners in a given district and to have a method that helps ensure that the council or the legislature proportionally represents the citizens so that you don't have what Karen was just talking about with, like all Republicans in one county and all Democrats in another county. Because when we have unified government like that, there just isn't anybody watching, with a different perspective and avoiding either intentional or really just blind not thinking about things that other people have as good perspectives. And one of the ways to run those elections is called single transferable vote. It's a multi-winner proportional ranked voting method. And we're just, I can't, we're not sure of this yet, but Vanessa, who was visiting and who did the instant runoff voting audits, has also been working hard on how to audit these proportional methods. And I'm learning that if there really aren't that many winners and candidates, we might be able to do better than I thought in the past with those. In Australia, they have hundreds of candidates and a dozen winners in most of their Senate seats and other places, legislatures. And that truly is back to what I was saying before about no idea what the margin of victory was, no idea how much auditing we would need to do to meet a risk limit. It's a devilishly difficult, fundamentally difficult math problem. But the ones that we are likely to do in council races in Colorado are probably going to be easier to deal with. So we might want to fine tune our methods and make sure that works well. But I'm more hopeful than I have been about auditing proportional contests.
Susan?
Yes, Susan.
Do you think that can help us in Denver because our city council turned down allowing the citizens of Denver to vote on whether or not we would have a alternative ranked choice voting type of uh, method of electing our municipal leaders. And we had a heck of a time trying to talk to the city council about that.
So you're talking a little bit more about the politics of it than the math of it, and I will share that what I've observed is that politicians, first of all, think they know everything about elections, and they think they proved it because they got elected, and there's something to be said for that, but they certainly don't usually understand the math and the auditing and things like that. Um, and they're usually very reluctant to change what is always the voting method that got them into office, right? Because they're scared of
Right.
change like anybody. So I was disappointed to see that they didn't want to let the people weigh in on that. Sometimes things like that require citizens' initiatives, which is how it has often happened. But after a scandal or after, a result that is, has only 30% of the people supporting the eventual winner, which happens way more regularly than you'd want around the country. Citizens often get excited about making change. And that's exactly what happened, as I heard just the other day, in Fort Collins. So in 2011, they had a big initiative to run a ranked ballot instant runoff voting, and it failed. And then they had a winner at some level, and I don't know the details, who won with a small percentage. And people had seen other cities adopt better voting methods. And the combination of all those things, better experience, led to a win for a new voting method. So, I certainly wouldn't give up. I think if you see results, always jump on a situation where you see something publicized where, somebody wins with a very small percentage, because that's when people really shake their head and say, how is it that we're doing this? It makes sense then to everybody. It doesn't make as much sense when people are getting in with a big margin.
Okay, thanks.
Great question. And yeah, it's a politics thing. And, the league hopefully finds the right time to support things that have a good chance of winning.
This may be an uninformed question, but we've done risk limiting audits here. Is that done across the United States, particularly in things like presidential and congressional elections? There's this big push by the current administration to, claw back how many days people have to be able to cast a ballot and how they register and all of this kind of stuff. It just seems to me that there are lots of things that Colorado is doing that help ensure that when the Secretary of State announces that so-and-so is the winner, that you can have a certain level of confidence that that person probably did actually win that election. But it doesn't seem like there's any continuity in probably one of the most important elections that American citizens participate in every 4 years.
I mean, it's a combination. What most of us in kind of the election security integrity world focus on and have for a decade or more is something called evidence-based elections. And so what we want is affirmative evidence. We want audits and things like that the winners actually won. And in Colorado, we have, as I said, for hundreds of contests, we have pretty good evidence, even though there's still a lot of things that I want to improve around Colorado audits. And as I just said, there's hundreds where, the margin was pretty tight and we only looked at a couple ballots and, we didn't see any smoking guns. You have no right to complain, about, to assert that you have evidence that there was a problem, but we also don't have as much evidence as we'd like that the outcome was right. And this is not to impugn any election officials. You know, they are heroes of mine and they do amazing work, and our processes are good in Colorado and so on. But I want to get them out of the position of saying, trust us. I want to get them into the position of saying, look at these bipartisan teams doing audits and digging up ballots that are carefully randomly selected, and they show just what it is that we reported in our original preliminary results. So, you know, we want to give better evidence for this. Colorado is a leader there, and there are audits in maybe half the states, maybe a little more. I'm not impressed, honestly, with hardly any of them. And it's still early days, and election officials are still kind of getting used to this. And I wish there was more attention to robust audits. And you know, we're slowly making progress, but it's frustrating. But, you know, again, that's not to say that we have evidence that there are bad outcomes, except that they do occasionally happen. And that's, you know, Rhode Island announced bad results a couple of years ago, and people pointed it out, and they said, wow, we should probably do audit. So it's always take advantage of issues like that to galvanize public support for better auditing.
So not every state in the United States does these audits.
Not at all, not by any stretch. And the ones that do tend to do it, you know, without a lot of public scrutiny, without a lot of transparency. You know, they'll roll the dice, but they won't show you what it is that they're rolling the dice for. So you're like, okay, you know, I'm back to Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls. Like, you roll the dice, and I'm going to tell you which way it ended up. I'm going to tell you how many, because the dice is blank. It doesn't have any marks on the edges. It's a great line from Guys and Dolls, and it's kind of what they do in a lot of places. If they don't tell you, if it's not possible for the public to actually calculate for themselves based on a dice roll what would be audited, then why even, it's theater. Why even roll the dice? You got to publish exactly what you're going to audit, and exactly which ones you would audit depending on the dice roll. And then when the dice roll happens, you ought to ask the public, so what does that mean? Which ones are we auditing? But no, they just say, and that means this one, and everybody kind of says, whatever. It's frustrating. But, you know, I'm picky about these things.
Well, I think probably the vast number of American voters don't have any concept about this, focus on. We've seen the administration seems to want to focus on things that maybe not nearly as important as what you're talking about, Neil. But it may sound good to the state legislators who are wanting to go in and change some of these things, but basically maybe all it does is just makes it harder for people to be able to vote, but doesn't really seriously have any value in how those votes are counted and how they're reported. Is that accurate? An accurate statement?
I would say the devil is in the details, and I don't know much about this at all. I do know, I mean, first of all, it is absolutely, you know, all the evidence that I see says that fraud is rare, but that's, you know, fraud that we have uncovered. And what I'm really telling you is also, we're not looking as closely as we should. And there are places that I'm worried. So, you know, that's true. The guy who just bought, who's running Liberty Vote, which was Dominion, I just learned this morning, you know, just by looking at some news reports, was involved in Missouri back in the day when there were allegations, and maybe credible allegations, of, you know, not the best election processes in the St. Louis voting processes. And of course, we know that, LBJ was fraudulently elected at one point, and there have been episodes in the past. Jimmy Carter, pointed out that he had been that they were trying to say he didn't win when he really did win. This does happen under the right stakes or the wrong stakes with the wrong people in charge. And Scott was very frustrated that there were, in fact, some Acorn volunteers who were registering voters who were, not actually people, or they were dead or something like that. There was at least a small number of verified incidents where people were, again, doing the terrible forms of politics. And he tried to clean that up and succeeded, but got pushed back at because, it was also perceived and certainly was some of his efforts would have put a lot of barriers in front of some other people. So, what we try to do is just shine the light of day in all of these cases and figure out what's actually right and try to avoid the competing loud voices claiming one thing or another for political advantage, and try to stick with the kinds of things that we do in Colorado, where Republican and Democratic and independent clerks like Tiffany Lee and La Plata work together to have, really clean processes. And I think what we can do to help them and to follow best practices would benefit the whole country.
Okay, are there any other questions? I enjoy engaging in a conversation with you, Neil, although I have to say that a lot of times I am not really sure I fully understand, certainly not to the depth of understanding that you have. Each time, I guess I walk away with a little better understanding than what I had from the previous conversation, but it's so complex. I would like to believe that everybody that's involved in elections is wanting to do the right thing. And I think in many cases it was demonstrated that even under immense pressure, people did do the right thing. But
yes,
who's moving forward, whether that will always be true. So
yeah, I'd encourage everybody to show up at audits and to engage with these things. I know it's not very necessarily exciting. I mean, I find it exciting, but I appreciate that it's a lot to kind of deal with. But the election officials always say, please come tour our office. You'll understand way better the enormous number of things that we're doing to do good things. And I think that's true across the country. And I wish people would do that across the country and get more excited about auditing. Anyway, thank you all for your attention and moving.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Is there anything that anybody else has? Is there anything that anybody else has questions about or that they want to share? I am going to suggest that we not meet in December. If there's somebody who feels a real need to, that thinks that we will be missing an important opportunity, raise your hand. We can certainly have a meeting.
I don't know. What does Barb think?
Barb is January. In that case,
my summer vacation in December.
Exactly. You can stay home and be warm.
I just noticed that on the icons you can put up, there's no thumbs down. There's only a thumbs up icon.
You just want positive stuff here, Susan.
Yeah. What we know, and I've seen this since the 80s, what we know is that you want to encourage positive behavior online, because when people get a chance to dump,
it's
just ugly, and I'm so sorry. But yeah, I'm sure they did that for a reason. And I hope I don't learn why, really.
Well, that's interesting, Susan, because I hadn't noticed that before. All righty. Well, then we will plan on January the 15th. we do need to go back and I don't know how much, Neil had volunteered to contact the people who are pushing in municipal elections to be able to vote by phone. And he had a number of questions. And so he needs to edit them because he's got several hundred by now, Neil. So,
Yeah, Michelle wants those questions.
edit those.
I know. And I will say, I mean, so I was engaged, and then I realized how much I had to do for the election, and so I was like, okay, I can't do it all. But there have been conversations elsewhere about that. They have released a version 1.0 of the toolkit for the back end. We were told back then they were going to release it, a reference implementation for the clients. I don't think that's come out yet. So I'm going to ask Michelle for that. It's hard to comment without seeing that because that's really where most of the questions are. But yeah, I'm going to get back to that and continue that conversation. But there's been some pretty interesting articles recently, and it's remains a tough nut.
Well, if you will follow through on that and then keep me abreast of your progress, then we can kind of plan. If you're able to make some progress moving forward and get some responses, then we can focus on that at the January meeting.
I don't know how to get rid of the smiley I just put up, so forgive me for clicking on the.
It disappears eventually, Neil.
Good. I'm not trying to be all cool with my sunglasses.
Oh, you're cool. You're cool.
I think we do need to remember. Just a knee-jerk reaction on my part is that we spent an awful lot of time coming up with an election security position that Colorado voted on. We actually tried to get LWVUS to vote on it. I wonder if it would be worth moving forward and trying again now that some things have changed in the voting arena. But basically, Gaithia worked with Neil on that, along with Maud and Neural and Tony Larson, and I sat in on some of those meetings too.
You were great, Karen.
You guys did the heavy.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And I have recently seen an Indivisible meeting, I think at a national level, that was led by people who really understand some of the lack of evidence that I think we want to promote nationally. So I had forgotten that, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. And I think that is a good opportunity for us to ask again. I think, is this the year that there's going to be an actual meeting? And so I think we should push that, and I think we should point out that the time is ripe, and we want people to remember both our work and some developments that continue to emphasize the importance.
Well, I think is there, Beth, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and this is an aside, Jeff Oster of the Religious Freedoms Task Force will be pushing that at the national level as well, that position on religious freedom. Doesn't mean that we can't push election security too. Just saying.
Well,
do you mean he's pushing to have a national position on religious freedom? Okay.
Yes.
I just think and I don't have the depth of understanding certainly that some of the other folks that worked on that project did, but it just seems to me, especially with all of this push to change things around voting, and in some cases to make it harder without maybe making it more secure, everybody seems to be concerned about fraud. Well, these are important things that you can put into place to give people some confidence that fraud won't occur. And I was astounded that LWVUS pushed back when we proposed it originally. But like you say, Neil, the time may be right now, especially since there seems to be more of a push with a younger generation. We want to be able to vote with our phone. Well, okay. that may be fine for a municipal election, but I'm not so sure that when you're looking at a presidential or congressional elections or even gubernatorial elections, whether you want to open that door. I don't know, but
Well, and for the record, the people from mobile voting are not pushing to be the only method of voting, just a method of voting. Do not take that as an endorsement.
yes, Beth,
Okay?
Beth always qualifies her statement.
Well, I'm just saying.
Keep listening, Beth. Keep engaging. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I gotta say, I do wonder about it, especially for special district elections. You know, really small elections that have miserable turnout that hopefully nobody would want to have.
Right.
You know,
And I'm trying to get that actual number I've written to DOLA. I tried to get AI to do it for me, but it said it was impossible. So I've got an email into DOLA asking how many elections did we actually have, and generally it's been in the 10% range. But the conflicts of interest that exist are so overwhelming because most of the elections are handled by the attorneys who represent. It's
Yeah.
just I want to try to go meet with somebody at Jeffcoat. When they made those big changes of moving the year and the month of those elections, and then they didn't bother to talk to the clerks about it. I want to go ask, is there a way that this could ever be done by the county clerks, these elections, these special district elections. And it's getting more critical because I don't know if you followed any of the legislation on like water districts, but there was a bill put forth last year that ended up getting through that I sure didn't like. I don't know, Andrea, you'll remember the one where they basically wanted developers to be able to demand water from a water district, and there was no, it was no holes barred. They had no restrictions on it. They finally did it so they can demand water if they're in their district. And I don't even think it should be a demand because all special districts have service plans, and the people that are on those boards are trying to do the best job they can to manage the water that they've got. And so anyway, that law got through, but at least it wasn't an on demand from outside of the water district.
Yeah, I think that's points. Certainly, there's been a lot of problems with special district elections already. It does point to the fact that these are not uncontentious elections or ones where there isn't a strong motivation for biasing the things in your direction. So I'm not sure that a method that's more questionable as to its veracity, you can't just say, well, because they're small elections, that would be better. It's really complicated to figure out how you would.
Yeah, I hear you, Davia.
Part of it too is cost. We have a hospital district board that doesn't want to have elections because it costs $60,000 to be able to hold one. Well, I mean, that's outrageous when their role is to oversee taxpayer dollars that are used to maintain our hospital facilities. And if they're spending $60,000 to have a race for board members and have a really low turnout, their pushback is that money could be better spent doing other stuff. And I have to say, I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah.
And Karen, did you ever ask them, I'll just give you an example here in a minute, but did you ever ask them about how they came up with this $60,000?
Well,
why it's $60,000.
It had to do with, again, it's not handled by the county clerk. There's a lawyer that handles that. It was the mailing out and all of that kind of stuff. In fact, we actually, the league had said, we will help you with this. We'd help you stuff envelopes or do whatever. And when push came to shove, they worked it out so that they didn't have to have an election.
Yeah. Well, we compared, we have a very small district. I finally got on the board because I was so upset with so many things going on in my metro district. So anyway, we had been told that we have 296 homes, okay? So I think right now we've got around 450 registered voters. And we were told it would cost us $20,000 to have an election. And I'm just like, really? So then we found out that the person who said this, our management company, who has a huge conflict of interest, also did the election for Park and Rec. It was less for the Park and Rec than it was for our little district. I mean, it was just such an outrageous, they just throw out a figure and say, well, this is how much it's going to cost. And they have the liberty to do that because no one's watching. There is nobody.
Yeah, how much was that lawyer charging the hospital district to run that election? I mean,
Exactly.
probably $350 an hour.
And that was the figure that one of the board members had used. So, you know, it's probably, if I had been doing my due diligence, I should have gone and said, would you please lay out for me exactly where these expenses are coming from? But, you know, you reach a point after a while where there's so much other stuff going on. Where do you want to focus your time here? So
And that's what they all depend on.
that you're exactly right. You're exactly
But
right.
it's just like it's such a takeover by private industry of our whole system. I mean, special district, metro districts especially, that, you know, once the county or city gives them permission to have one, man, it's taken over by that private entity. And nobody watches what they do from then on out.
Mhm.
And it's costing taxpayers enormous amounts of money when all they're doing is repaying debt. I hope you all, I made the Denver Post anyway. I'm not editorial.
If you want to send me a link there to your article.
Okay, well, it had to do with that. There's a metro district at Broadway, you know where the old Gates is, Gates Rubber?
Yes.
Okay, well, they were going to build a bunch of stuff in there. Well, of course, the land is so polluted, they had to do a major cleanup. Well, the developers sold bonds and now they're reneging and they don't have anything built. So there's no taxpayers to pay for it. And the developer's off the hook. You know, once they get those bonds and pay themselves, they're off the hook. There's nobody there that has to pay it except who lives there, and nobody's living there. So anyway, they asked the city of Denver to pay back the bonds. And they said, nope. My husband said, no, we're not doing that. And so then the Denver Post, Meg Schrader, she's pretty well informed on metro districts. And I'm pretty sure she wrote the op-ed, but it was the Denver Post op-ed. And so then there was a reply the next week from MDEC, which is Metro District Education Coalition, who came into being after David Magoya's big, you know, spread on metro districts back in 2019. They wanted to have an organization that would represent them. And so she replied, and I just had to laugh when I saw it. I went, well, and who are you representing, you know? And so I replied to her reply and it got in the paper. So
good. Congratulations. Good on you.
so anyway.
Well, is there anything else that we need to discuss?
Well, that's big, fair, and thank you. And I hope we get a link for that because, you know, sometimes just one person who notices something and calls it out can help a lot of people understand things that
Well, I called her
could
out
be brushed under the rug.
on how much money is being made by this entire cottage industry. There's a huge cottage industry associated with metro districts. And if you go in, I mean, I spent 6 hours one day going through Adams County on just two attorney firms, seeing how much all these districts had budgeted. It came to $1.5 million for one firm and 1.1 million. And that didn't even include some of the work, the upfront work, you know, that they get paid for. But they're making, and the reason I did this was because there was that task force, that was done for metro districts. And of course, Jared Polis said, well, I won't sign this unless I get to decide who's on, the committee. So 3/4 of the people were representatives of the developers. So of course, nothing came out of that except bad advice. And now I lost my train of thought, but it just so I wrote to Dora and I said, you've got people on here with conflicts of interest, and this is why they have conflicts of interest. So all she did was ask them, do you guys make a lot of money on Metro District? And they said, no, it's hardly anything that we make. And it was one county. And I was just appalled that anyway.
Well, keep raising the alarms, because it's been my experience, it takes numerous times before it really begins to register with enough people to make a difference. So
Or a
Karen, I'll
lawsuit.
send you the links, and then if you want to share them, you can.
okay.
Those op-eds.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else, Neil is going to keep me in the loop so I know what we're going to be talking about in January. And if the rest of you have other things that you think we need to be focusing on, with the upcoming election, I've talked about this a little bit with Jerry. Both she and I served on the committee that put together, Susan was also, Stacy, that put together the white paper on the Colorado elections. I don't know how helpful it would be to offer some kind of abbreviated Zoom type presentation for each of the local leagues if they were interested, or other community groups that a league could get together. But you all might want to think about that. And if you're interested, we can certainly, the link to the white paper is on the State League's website. I think we would need to have more than just Jerry and I doing that. Barb?
Well, I was saying in a number of the conversations I've been in with some leagues on Unite and Rise, I am mentioning that as a resource
Good.
for leagues to get familiar with. So I think you need to take a show on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether it's individual leagues or just a special Zoom. Make it easy, make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to get the word out again. We can't just assume that everybody knows. And it was a hot topic when you worked on it, but it needs to be brought out again. So I am pushing that.
Good. Okay. Well, Jerry.
Very quickly. I noticed last fall when I attended our ballot issue presentation at the local level, first of all, there were about 30 people in the room. I knew 5 people. That means there were all brand new people, not only to league, but some of them were new to Colorado. The lack of knowledge about Tabor, the questions that came up on Tabor, we just need some little fact sheet or presentation, or what's all in it? Why are we doing this? Why are we voting on LL to keep money? All those kinds of things. So
let's just get rid of Tabor.
Well, and then somebody raised the point that there's been so many workarounds and things are so interlaced that if one domino falls, the whole thing could crumble. So in terms of financing at the local and state level. So I don't know what the answer is, but there were lots of questions.
We had our senator and representative came a couple of weeks ago to give us a belated update on the special legislative session. And what they kept, one of them's Republican, one of them's Democrat. And both of them are seriously concerned about making sure that, citizens in their districts get the services that they need. But they reiterated multiple times in their presentation that if they thought it was hard last legislative session, it's going to be worse, because there's still that huge deficit. And of course, what HR 1 has done, it's really created some additional problems because of the way the state taxes are pegged to federal tax law. And, the need to decide how much government is enough. And if you're going to start cutting government back, prioritizing. And that's what nobody seems to want to do. And of course, Tabor was raised, and, that's an issue as well. So I don't know, Beth. You and your staff are stretched, but if there are people that you know that have a really clear, good understanding of Tabor, and number one, how it has negatively impacted in a lot of ways, plus, is there anything that could be done to improve it so that,
Well, yeah, it's happening now. I mean, Colorado Fiscal Institute is the big group that's behind it all, which makes sense. They're pushing for a progressive tax rate to get rid of Colorado's flat tax rate, which is part of the issue.
as is the bill. So.
Are they coming up with, that's who I was going to suggest we talk to, because they've sent me some information. If we could have, people don't understand what Tabor is. And I had somebody, my neighbor, say, oh, that's why I get that deduction on my taxes for being over 65 or whatever. And I said, no, the Homestead Act. I said, that's a whole different thing, but that was her impression. And so if they could give us something really simple to show the impact
They already did.
that it's had on our state. I mean, we've gone to what, the top 5 for funding education down to the bottom 5 or something.
Bottom 2.
Bottom 2.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, how embarrassing is that? And those kinds of statistics, I think, are meaningful to me. I think if people could see them.
I think we did. They had a presentation at Making Democracy Works Day, didn't they? And it's very simple, and they take it on the road. So
really,
yeah, take it.
Making
and call them. But I think
we've got a web page too about Tabor specifically. I'll see if I see where that is.
That link.
Oh, there's a baby.
Yeah.
It's on our election. It's on our election information card.
Hi, baby.
Cute.
I thought that the title board turned down the Colorado Fiscal Institute proposal.
They did. It had too many topics.
Yeah.
Too many.
Multiple
Oh,
subjects.
it didn't fit single subject.
Yeah, so that's what I heard. Or I mean, that's what they said because I heard their president.
Bell is continuing to pursue.
I think we need to get rid of the single subject amendment.
Well,
that was sure a bad idea when they did it.
Well, the Buffalo one didn't work either.
Tabor
I was there. I was there when we supported it because it followed Tabor. 2 years after Tabor, that was on the ballot to go to a single subject because, well, if you know Tabor, everything but the kitchen sink.
I know, but then you have to get rid of it piecemeal. So it's.
Well, it depends on how whatever is written. And you could say anything before 2020 would take. You could just take out or whatever.
Hard part about having multiple things
Hi, baby.
Bye.
in a single ballot measure, though, is that you may not like this, but you like that, and then it becomes a situation of, okay, well, do I like it enough to vote yes, or do I dislike this enough to vote no? That's part of what the feds, the Congress does, where they put all kinds of stuff in things, and with the
ability to get a $500,000 payout if your phone records were
exactly. I mean, that's just insane.
Anyway.
Okay.
Do they offer a video for people to use? The Colorado Fiscal Institute? Like if I wanted to present it in my neighborhood?
I believe so. And I'd be super happy to get them in touch with you, Fair, if you.
Well, I've been in touch with them before. They're in my.
Okay.
So.
They're in my fantasy football league.
Okay.
They live on the same. Do they live the floor above us?
Yeah, I mean we're in the same co-working
We're in the same
space,
building.
which is where the fantasy football thing comes in.
Well, I didn't know where
We're gonna run, folks. We'll see you.
Okay, me
Happy
too.
Yeah, I gotta
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Happy Thanksgiving.
What a diverse group.
Fantasy football too, Beth.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Beth.